So, what exactly was Bill 115?
Uh, Bill 115 a was a law brought in by the Liberal government with the express purpose of denying teachers, educators in the province of Ontario, the rights to collective bargaining and to impose a contract on us.
And how does that affect teachers and students during and after school hours?
Uh, Now it doesn't because it's over. But at the time, um, because of the conditions imposed on us, what we could and we couldn't do, because of the bill, the only way that teachers really had of protesting it was to withdraw, or we felt was that to withdraw extracurricular activities, right? Things that weren't specifically defined in the Education Act or our contracts working for the school boards.
So, what happened with the elementary school protest?
Well, unlike us in the secondary, who did have a way to, kind of express or protest on our own by withdrawing extracurricular activities, that was the way we chose to do it in secondary schools or high schools. For elementary schools, they didn't have that option, right? They couldn't withdraw some kind of voluntary services like that. So the only way, or the way that they felt best they could do it, was to actually have their rotating strikes, where certain schools or certain areas would go on strike for one day. They gave parents 3 days notice, I think it was, so that they had a chance to make some other kind of arrangements for daycare or whatever happened to be for the children that day. And then the elementary school teachers walked out for that one day to protest what the government had imposed on us. For the elementary school teachers, the other thing, well, the district school board in Niagara here was actually supportive, I guess you could say, of what the teachers unions or federations were trying to do. Because I don't know if they entirely agreed with the process or what was happening, but they at least understood that these are people that we work with. So we wanted to maintain and keep a good relationship with them. So for the elementary school teachers, what they did was, because of the warning, they were able to just simply say, okay, schools are closed for that day. So it wouldn't become a situation where parents would just bring their children to school anyways, and then the school board would then be responsible for those kids, right? At the secondary school level, what happened with the students in Toronto and then carried on to other parts, it happened here in St. Catharines too, was that the students organized themselves for a one day of protest, where they suddenly walked out of school at, I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning, right across the province, which was, I mean, an effective way for them to voice their feelings on the matter, right, about how they felt about the difficulties going on between the province and the teachers. It got them, it got media attention. It got people talking about it. Whether their message got out is kind of a question, because it's always a thing with media. But at least if their goal was to shine a little bit of light on it and get people talking or thinking about the students in this whole process as well too, not just the teachers in the province, then I think it was probably effective.
What was the aftermath of the Bill 115 protests?
Well, the aftermath, it's tough to say. I think they did go a long way. It positives and negatives. It did create some hardships in between parents and teachers, because parents seem to be at least a little bit understanding about the one day of protest. They were given enough notice, and they didn't happen that often. So while it was an inconvenience for the day, it wasn't something that carried on for a long time. If it had been for a week, right, or a month, then there would have been a lot of hard feelings about it. But for the one day of action, I don't think it was. It wasn't a huge negative thing. For the high schools, the extracurricular activities, that was a little bit different, because that at first we were doing it kind of a rotating as well from day to day, which parents and students didn't seem to have too much of a difficulty with, since it was only a one time happening here or there. But once it turned into a permanent thing that was going on for weeks at a time and months at a time, that's when there was a lot of a kind of hardship there, right? Where parents started wondering, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? Are you jeopardizing my child's success by doing this? And the students were worrying about things like graduation, because some of them, had to think about scholarships if they were playing certain sports that weren't playing. So in that respect, the protests for secondary school did have a negative side to it. On a positive, the person who we felt had caused all this difficulty in the first place unnecessarily, Premier Dalton McGuinty, well, he isn't the Premier of Ontario anymore. And part of that, at least, is probably because of these protests. It's important to be heard, right? It's important to say things, just as it was important for the students to walk out on those days to be heard that, hey, we're part of what's going on here. We're not just something that's mentioned in a discussion. We are people who are involved in this, who are being impacted by this as well.